Okay, so it's now June 1941. Hitler has changed his attention from the Battle of Britain, which kind of becomes a stalemate. There's no winners or losers at this point. Um, and he turns to face eastwards. He wants to eliminate the communist USSR, which is now under the control of Joseph Stalin. And he wants to create that Lebensraum, that living space for the German people. And he begins Operation Barbarossa in June 1941. And he uses those blitzkrieg tactics again, those that lightning war. But Stalin was prepared. There is no flies on our Stalin. He moves all the heavy industry behind the Ural Mountains, which are in the northern territory of Russia, and he uses a scorched earth policy, which is basically burn everything as you retreat. So you might not be winning, you might be retreating, you might be losing, but they're not gaining anything. Your attackers aren't gaining anything. So even as the Germans approached, and the Russians had to retreat, the Germans were approaching and gaining nothing. It was just everything was burnt. They would burn livestock, they would burn crops, they would burn buildings and just retreat. So there was nothing to be gained. Unfortunately, despite the fact that Hitler studied Napoleon, he didn't realize that winter in Russia is cold. And this had a massive impact on the German soldiers. His progress is completely impacted by the Russian winter. He does capture Kiev, which is now in the Ukraine, but he failed to capture Moscow and Leningrad. So he does. So Kiev we have down here. Okay, so we have the Soviet Union. Here you can see that in the purple. So German influence has spread considerably. Okay, we can see the peach of Poland there, Czechoslovakia gone. Austria has now been incorporated into Germany with Anschluss. So Denmark and Norway. So we can see the huge spread of Nazi influence here. This is the attack on Stalingrad. Okay, so the Battle of Stalingrad is a vicious hand-to-hand street battle. Basically, the Russians attacked in a pincer movement from the sides. So a pincer movement, if you can imagine it. So we have the Germans in the middle and the Russians come in from each side, and then they close in. So they eventually surround the Germans on all sides and cutting off their supplies. So Stalin ordered that the city would not be lost. It's Stalingrad. It's named after him. So due to the extensive fighting, it's vicious, it's hard, there's huge losses. The Germans are forced to surrender in February 1943. 60,000 Germans died, but over 0.5 million Russians died. So there's huge losses for Russia, but Stalin is determined not to lose Stalingrad. So Pearl Harbor, I'm sure you've heard of, happens in December 1941. It's what brings the Americans into the war. Now, what's happening over in the Pacific is that the Japanese emperor has decided to build an empire. And this is very worrying for the Americans. So the Japanese attack the American base of Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. America had been helping Britain with supplies, but they hadn't been actively in combat. So now America and Britain are carrying out bombing raids together. They help in Northern Africa to help the British defeat the Italians and the Germans. So D-Day, the 6th of June, 1944, this is the end of the war, essentially. The Allied forces land in Normandy. So the Allied forces are the British and the Americans, and the Canadians are there too. On 5 codename beaches. I want you to remember these 5 beaches. Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, Sword. You must remember those 5. It's so important. Ships and paratroopers are used to bombard German defences. They created Mulberry Piers to help land the boats. Because of this extensive operation, the German advance is halted. They're able to, the Allied forces are able to advance through Normandy.